Now we're live. Way to start. All right, welcome everyone to
Exciting.
the Rovertime podcast number 17. Today we got me, Mark Wazz, we got Stan,
Good evening.
Terry,
Hello.
or Phil, whatever you want to call him, and then Lex.
Hey!
All right, so actually we think we got a lot going on this weekend. The first and most obvious one is the hurricane that hit Houston. And mostly what I want to talk about is like the reaction to it. Because obviously it's being politicized a lot, and people are having iffy opinions about Trump. Some people, either say that he's doing a great job, or they're saying he's only doing it to look good, and they say he's not doing a good enough job, like how he gave a small donation of $1 million, and now I guess the left is having trouble deciding whether $1 million is a lot of money or not enough. So
it was not small when it was a loan. It is apparently very small when it is a donation.
Pretty much.
So here's the thing. I don't know. I went through Katrina. I lived in New Orleans for it before and after. I went back and helped rebuild, and that was definitely politicized in a really weird way. I mean, we all remember like Kanye, like Bush hates black people and all that.
Right.
So part of me just says this is just the normal, ebb and flow of it, and I guess it's to be expected. It's the political blood sport. It doesn't mean I have to like it, but I think this is tamer than it was last time around. Especially given the context of that, like these people legitimately hate Trump way more than they hated Bush, to like an absurd degree that is almost insane on a daily basis. And most of them have been relatively tame and withdrawn on really criticizing him. They are not going off the deep end with lunatic stuff for the most part. They're just doing the word mincing.
So speaking of Katrina, I'm curious. Do you see what I've heard is there has been a big difference in just how Houston was prepared for it versus New Orleans?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because, I mean, they had Katrina to watch out for it. Like, this is the funnier part of this is all the people in Houston who gave us shit. Because I evacuated to St. Charles, and then I went to Houston for the week after. So I was in Houston for the levees to break, or the day after the levees broke, for a week, figuring out if we were going to go back, what we were going to do with a bunch of other people from New Orleans. And all the people from Houston who were friends with the people high school friends with the people that I was staying with, they were like, well, what the fuck do people expect? You live under sea level, you're retards for living there, ha ha ha. And we were like, fuck you, dude, that's like not chill, like our city's destroyed. And they were like, you're probably right, let's go get drunk. And so we all got drunk and had a good time. And now, like, I really kind of wanted to be like, ha ha ha, you live in a shitty city or with shitty drainage, and apparently you're retarded for living there. But we're all 15 years older, and that would be uncouth because their houses are underwater. Next year, I'm definitely going to make that joke on the first anniversary, though. Let me tell you. But this is the thing. They had that Katrina experience to be like, oh, this is what happens when a city gets a ton of rainfall. Because Houston is not that different. It has a bunch of levees and a bunch of locks and a bunch of lake systems there that are around it that are going to create these issues, and it did. It's not nearly as bad. There is no Lake Pontchartrain sitting in Houston. And that's actually, like, Hurricane Katrina did not cause the destruction of New Orleans. It was Lake Pontchartrain. When that levee broke, that's what hit through a couple of spillways. And it's complicated, but that's essentially the water reserve that flooded the city. Houston doesn't have anything quite that big, but it has even worse drainage. So it looks bad, and it's going to be bad, and there's going to be a lot of damage, and it's going to be in a more expensive area, and it's going to threaten a lot more tall structures and big concrete buildings that are going to have risk of catastrophic failure down the road. So it'll be a more long-lived problem that's a little harder to see, but I can pretty much guarantee you Houston's going to be on the ball about making sure that every single building gets all the inspections it needs and everything gets ripped out and looked at that needs to. But yeah, they had that experience to be like, this is what happens to a major metro when everything dies, like everything gets flooded out and people can't come back for a month.
Is the water level still, like, are people still riding boats down their streets or what?
I'm having a hard time figuring out if that's like a widespread thing. All the friends I have in Houston are saying like things are starting to get back to normal and they're like putting stuff back together. And but I don't know how much of that is like, their neighborhood is okay, because that's the thing. Once stuff starts receding, once the rain stops and the water starts trailing away, there's going to be a lot of areas that really quickly get drained. And there's going to be a lot of areas that are just swamps for months and months until somebody gets the right pumps turned back on.
Mhm.
I think that was
Yeah.
abnormal too, though. Like, didn't the hurricane just like stall in that spot for like days?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, no, this was way worse rainfall than Katrina, like by far. So that's the key difference.
But it was much calmer wind, wasn't it?
Yeah, there was almost no wind damage in Houston. It was all just you can't like there is no place on earth that handles 60 inches of rain per day for days on end. Like you can do that for 4 hours in most areas, and you'll be able to get enough runoff, enough absorption, and like you're still going to have massive issues. You're going to have your storm drains completely filled, and there's nothing you can do about it. You will get backup, but like there's no place that can handle 4 or 5 days of that kind of rainfall.
The governor of Louisiana was actually on CNN, and Chris Cuomo, who I believe had to practice beforehand his, show empathy face, because I believe he always does. He had asked him, what do you need? And he basically said, we need the rain to stop. He's like, the government's giving us everything they want. Trump's been checking in. He signed all the papers within a couple of hours requesting it. He's like, but if, essentially until the rain stops, we can't do anything. And that was it. It was just, we had from a post, okay, shit, it's here now preparedness, they had everything ready, but it was just, the rain, like I said, just the rain, it was stalled and it just did not stop.
Mm-hmm.
I actually did, have found there have been, for the most part, some people making, comments about, well, that's what you get Texas, for voting Trump, even though Houston voted for Hillary. So that kind of ruins that narrative because, they got hit the hardest and, but I also found, where people are still blaming, even Jill Stein, posted it, she tweeted that, victim of climate change and the sold out politicians causing it. Really? I mean, and then there's people, when Trump is sending out things, I saw a couple people are like, if I want the weather reports, I'll look at the Weather Channel. Seriously, is this a time to be nitpicky and snitty at every fucking thing he said? I mean, it's.
Did you guys see that interview with the founder of the Weather Channel? Said he's a skeptic of climate change and that the politicians are just running with it. You see that interview?
Oh, he's talked about being a skeptic for years, like probably since The Inconvenient Truth.
Yeah, it was a pretty big issue, but he sold off the company though. So I mean, it's
right, yeah.
And
because what happened with him is he, he's an actual climate scientist, and then essentially his partners and stuff, they were just politically minded, and everything kind of went that way. And he's just like, all right, none of these people are about science anymore. I'm done.
Then according to Bill Nye, he should be jailed or killed because we need those climate change deniers to die off before anything can happen.
I mean, or make a better argument.
Or exactly. And one of whatever the science is, I hate when it comes to climate change, people are like, well, 90% of scientists, you don't have 90% of the world's scientists in agreement. Okay. You just don't have that, it's not possible. It's 90% of, whatever, your little group is. But the only, one of the things when it comes to climate change where I get is they blame everything.
Whether sort of a religion, really.
It doesn't matter if it's, it's too hot, climate change, too cold, climate change, too much snow, climate change, not enough snow, climate change. I mean, how do they explain, all the, hurricanes and all the natural disasters that happened well before this? Was that climate change? No. I mean,
well, and that's you saw it right after Katrina. They said, well, these superstorms are going to be so much more common than they've ever been in the history of humanity. And they were trying to say the next year was going to be even worse. And then NOAA came out almost, within 6 months was like, no, that doesn't really track with how hurricanes work and how modeling works. And this is This is not actually like a thing. And then, of course, we've had 12 years since the last major storm. We had Sandy that did a little bit, but that was obviously, I mean, statistically speaking, we just have a ton of coastal area that if a major hurricane makes landfall in the United States, congratulations, it's going to fuck up a major metro area.
You know, where Sandy hit, there was, because like you said, it's a highly populated and dense area in that
It's
section.
really just kind of you chose to live on the coast. It sucks, but it's a risk.
And now
this is the thing. It's the real question of, are these things more powerful and more numerous because of global warming? It's like, well, statistically speaking, no, not really. We got very used to an extreme period of low storm activity from the late 70s on, right? And that put it in our minds because we got all of our satellites up and our national news networks, and they were very not used to having major storms. But like, you go back to the early 20th century, and like Galveston got destroyed multiple times in a decade.
Yeah. And how do you account for climate change? Okay, fine, it created the hurricane. Well, how does climate change account for its stopping, its movement? You know what I mean? It's like, okay, it was created and it just stops. Okay, so how is climate change? That's what was the main problem with this. If it didn't get stuck and stop, it would have been fine. I don't. It's that's my personal issue with the climate changers is it all goes into the basket. Everything. If it's anything negative, it all goes into the basket of this.
I think it's Kamala Harris, if I remember right.
Oh.
Right, but there's actually a quote from her where they're asking her about global warming and stuff, and I think they quoted something about how things are cooler or something like that. Or I don't remember exactly what it was, what she was asked, but her quote was, I think that global warming probably means all extreme weather of all types. It's like, interesting.
Right. That's exactly it. So it doesn't matter what it is. It's tornadoes, global warming.
And now for the next 7 days, you're going to hear about this other hurricane that's brewing, Hurricane Irma. It's potentially heading for the East Coast, and they're like hyping it up, saying it's grown quicker than any other hurricane. It could be a Category 6, and it's like, well, I guess we'll see. But I mean, they're already hyping that up because everyone's talking about Hurricane Harvey.
Well, I think they did the same thing with Katrina. You remember Hurricane Rita was about the same time, and that was like nowhere near what they predicted it to be. I think that was Rita anyway.
I think Rita was the year before. I'm trying to remember. And I remember evacuating for it. So
you said Katrina was 15 years ago?
Yeah, 12 years ago. It was 2005.
12 years ago, yeah.
Wow, I was 9. Yeah, I don't remember. Sorry. I got a couple things I wanted to screen share. Let's see. Here's the first one by Charlie Hebdo. And it's obviously just like a bunch of Nazis hailing Hitler from underwater because that's what they think Houston, Texas is, which is ridiculous. We've already talked about that, but...
Well, there was if you want to be more local or whatever you want to say, but this isn't specifically about the hurricane, but it was the American Economist, I think is the magazine, and another major magazine, I can't remember, but they both had Trump depicted as Nazi recently, like their last covers. It's like, seriously?
Well, there was that one German magazine that had him pictured as in the KKK hood.
That might have been it, but
which that picture was coincidentally used in the hate crime against that small black church that had, that Matt did a video on, that the posters were carefully placed right on the front door.
Amazingly straight too, by the way.
Yeah,
that was not a rush job.
No,
well, I mean, making it obviously was. But.
Yes.
I didn't see that, but I mean, I know Sean Hannity loved that clip from, this has been probably a couple months ago now, but where was it, in Europe somewhere, where they were trying to show an Islamic protest, and they just like got all the people off the street and grouped them around very carefully in front of the camera and stuff. And
oh yeah, that was CNN. Yeah, that was
CNN, yeah.
Yeah, and actually, they're saying angels sent by God. It was also a bunch of rednecks with their freaking rowboats and outboard motors that went down and saved a bunch of those people.
Yeah, I think it was like mostly that. And there's people waiting in line to volunteer. I watched the whole Ben Shapiro breakdown of this, and he did a great job. So anyone watching, I recommend you go watch the Ben Shapiro rebuttal to this. But yeah, basically, I just hate that sentiment. Like, you couldn't get by without the federal government. I mean, you don't need the federal government. Like you said, we had people volunteering with the means that they had, with boats, helping each other. You don't. It's not all about federal government. Plus, these people are paying the federal government to do it. Like, of course, you're going to get the service. Like,
well, I know here in Iowa, we sent, and I'm pretty sure a bunch of other states did too. We sent a detachment of, I don't know if they were National Guard or a group of first responders down to help too. It's like, there's all kinds of groups helping. You don't need to rely specifically on one group.
Well, and that's the thing. That goes back to that preparedness of knowing what happened in New Orleans, because that was a big problem in New Orleans, was lack of boats, because everyone stored their boats instead of taking them with them. This time, everyone took their boats with them so they could bring them back, and that was clutch, because after Katrina, there was a huge shortage of watercraft because nobody could get to them or they were damaged. But there is some statements of like, well, the government did do something really nice, and that NOAA exists, the National Weather Service exists, and NASA does a lot of work in hurricane tracking and prediction. Like that is a really good function of government, where like there's not a huge economic need for that kind of public research and knowledge base to be happening, but it certainly is of public benefit once it gets to that scale, right? When we have this many people involved. So like I can get behind that concept, but yeah, it's certainly not this was only the federal government that did this protection. It's like that whole narrative is getting slightly annoying. Like it's not an all or nothing thing. There's no binary here to be had of like zero federal government or all the federal government.
Yeah, and another thing that's been going around is people brought up how this is happening to Texas after last hurricane. What was it, Sandy? When Texas refused to pass a bill giving aid to New Jersey. But from what I heard, like, it's not that simple. And I guess it's weird the way politics work. Like when they're trying to pass a bill, don't they include like a couple of like nonsense things that have nothing to do with what they're saying they're doing? So like there could be like hidden parts of the bill that are not good.
Well, that was a famous part of Obamacare, actually. Do you remember Nancy Pelosi? Oh, we need to pass the bill to know what's in it. It's like, excuse me?
Yeah. And these bills always have, hidden, dozens of things, it's like, and then the way politicians, get it through is, they'll name it, Saving Orphan Kittens and Babies bill. And, if you vote it down, it's like, how could you vote down the Orphan Kittens and Babies bill? He's just and it's like, well, okay, that was one line of it. The rest of it was, supporting Antifa, was, sacrificing white people. I mean, it's that other stuff that a lot of people don't read. It's like, yes, the primary bill thing is this, but then there's like, okay, and then the other riders, this line and this line and this line and this line of all this other shit that all these politicians all just cram in there to try and get through. But, they name it the Orphan Kittens and Babies. So,
well, that's like with the, I think it was the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the treaty. I think it was that one. But it was like that treaty was twice as long as the entire Harry Potter series. It's like, you really need that much for such a simple, which I would think would be fairly simple. And you have how many thousands of pages? It's like, there's probably a bunch of crap in there we don't want.
There's always a bunch of crap in there that they don't want.
It's like, I know it was a bunch of countries, but damn, do you really need like freaking 8,000 pages for one thing?
Yo, guys, shout out Matt Christiansen in the chat.
Hey, Matt.
Welcome.
But yeah, no, it's smart. I like it makes me cringe to say that it's smart, but it's like evil and deceptive. But they do the same thing with like during the election season. I remember, I don't know if it was local or state elections or something, and they had these commercials running saying someone's like obviously like a shameless bigot, this and that, and then they're like he denied to vote. Well, he voted no for a bill that would make tougher penalties for like pedophiles and stuff. But like I'm sure that there's like more in that bill, and I don't trust anything that I hear from commercials or politicians. Like I'm sure that there's more like crap that was in that bill that made it a bad bill.
Honestly, stuff like that. I mean, I can even predict what the issue was. That it was like a mandatory minimum bill, and like part of it was a mandatory minimum for child predators, and it probably also included a bunch of mandatory minimums about drug use or fraud or any number of other things where the standards are just not there, and like mandatory minimums are a double-edged sword, and that you're not giving judges the ability to craft what they're doing.
Well, yeah,
and
but
that
I think
somehow gets spun into, oh, he's soft on crime. It's like, shut up, he's not.
Yeah, like I think
nobody
they do
likes
that
criminals
on purpose to get the person to vote no so that they can run their campaign against them. Like I think they do it all on. It's like ridiculous how these people are thinking ahead, but like it's deceptive. I don't like it. But
well, I mean, they're trying to do a thing where they can have it both ways. Either they get the bills they want, and then if they're the ones sponsoring it, they're tough on crime, and that'll be their advertisement. If it fails, everyone who voted against it is going to be the opposite of that. They are going to be soft on crime, and it plays on both sides. And that is definitely like a local politics thing more than national, but they do the same thing. It's just different issues. And they try to have it both ways, where you're soft on you don't want economic growth because you didn't vote for this spending bill, or you don't want economic growth because you didn't vote for this tax reduction bill. It's like, well, can we just talk about if these bills were actually good ideas instead of trying to like impugn? That's what they do to Trump. Like that is their go-to weapon. They try to imbue the desire, the emotional character into the political choices that are made. And they don't know how to react to Trump because he doesn't give a damn about it.
Well, and now they're attacking Melania, which is why I'll bring up this next thing, which I'm sure you guys. Someone criticized Melania Trump for wearing a certain kind of shoes, and this is the person
who got the quotes right over here. If you want them.
Yeah. The person who criticized it was
this nut job,
like some sort of operatic clown makeup going on. And just
there's the shoes.
That is well done.
Here's the quote for you. It's this morning, Mrs. Trump boarded Air Force One wearing a pair of towering, pointy-toed snakeskin heels better suited to a shopping afternoon on Madison Avenue or a girls' luncheon at Le Grenouille. While the nation is riveted by images of thousands of Texans waiting with their possessions, their pets, their kids in chest-high water, desperately seeking refuge, while a government official recommended that those who insist on sheltering in place write their names and social security numbers on their arms, Melania Trump is heading to visit them in footwear that is a challenge to walk in on dry land. What kind of a message does a fly-in visit from a first lady in sky-high stilettos send to those suffering the enormous hardship, the devastation of this natural disaster? And why, oh why, can't this administration get anything, even a pair of shoes, right?
Because people like you freak, pick on every little thing that they do.
Literally.
She got off the plane and had flat, I don't know, it was boots or shoes. I mean,
sneakers
it was
afterwards.
normal shoes. But
okay.
I mean,
they're literally criticizing him from head to toe. Like
what I find most interesting is all that people screeched about with Hillary was not to judge her on her looks. I remember Lena Dunham don't use the words like frumpy or anything about her appearance. Yet that is literally all they do is slam Melania about every little thing she wears. Oh, look at her wearing that here. Look at her wearing this here. Look at her wearing that. Who gives a flying bleep? You know, are they covering how the two of them were working in food lines, handing out stuff and taking, you know, and literally you could see people's faces lighting up because the president and the first lady were there in person to see them and not surrounded by, you know, an army of guards. I mean, granted, okay, I'm not a fan of a lot of stuff Trump does, but seriously, just stop. These people just drive me fucking batty.
Speaking of driving, you see that one story about someone like almost got their car into the Trump motorcade? I forget where it was, but their car comes out of the forest, like, and they just like crash on the side of the road. They didn't make it to the motorcade, but like, yeah, and then like, it's crazy. People are literally losing their minds. But yeah,
really,
just, even if you hit the car with your car, like, you're not going to do any damage. That thing's built like a tank.
I mean, you know, the media's job is to inform the public, and what they're doing is they're feeding a narrative that's just absolutely crazy.
I mean, I hate to go back to it like as often as but I feel like Sticks and Hammer really has this one like perfect, where he called the media, the moral panic is the call of the day, and it is so amped up because we just gotten to this point, and it all built up from Bush and Obama, and like it's been played on both sides, and we've been going to this fever pitch of the political dogmatic person is going to destroy our nation with this hidden viewpoint that he has. Like it's with Bush, it was that he's his father's son in a Saudi plant, and he's doing all these things to help the Middle East and their power structures. It's like, all right, that sounds dumb. And in retrospect, you're like, yeah, that sounds really dumb. Then Obama, he's a Muslim, and he's gonna make the country a communist somehow, and now it's Trump, and he's a Nazi, and he's a Russian collusion, and they keep spinning these new tales to keep buffing this moral panic because people are so afraid. And there's definitely like a core, like independent 5-10% of the populace who just buys all of it and has been floating through these opinions through this whole way and just swinging back and forth. So instead of fighting over the middle, where it's like, well, we're going to convince you that you want to be an economic conservative and a social liberal, which is what they did for years, and now it's like, we're going to scare the shit out of you more about the person that you're looking at in office. And that's all we have to do, because you'll vote party ticket for whoever you're afraid of right now. And that didn't work. And they're trying to double down on it again and extend that moral panic, even after everyone's like, wait, no, my wallet is what matters. And I can see the problems we're having. They're visible to me in my everyday life.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm optimistic, but I'm not like near-term optimistic. I was really happy with the reaction to Harvey by and large. Like I heard the shoe thing, and that the reaction to the statement about the shoes lasted all of 15 seconds, and then the photos of the person who made the statement started coming out, and literally everyone's like, "Really?
Yeah,
you have a job in fashion reviewing?"
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like they've been. It's been a challenge for them to try and find some things to rail on him about, without seeming overly petty themselves with all the tragedy going on, because it's like, if we continue to slam him while this is going on, as much as we don't like him, let's be honest, from a president's standpoint, he is kind of doing, what he should and, needs to be doing. But then, as soon as this goes, I mean, heck, Mika and Joe on, what was it, on Thursday, were railing on about what a bully he is on Twitter and this and that. And, Mika, who has either so much makeup or so many faceless, she has to move it like this because she can't actually turn her face in any way, because she's afraid that the skin will crack, and then the lizard underneath will come out. It's just, I just, granted, Trump brings it a lot of himself. I mean, if he put the Twitter down for a week, I really, I think it might go a long way. Or if he just, I know it's what he got voted in for, would just stop the fight with the press. But then I was thinking about it today. And, when he does all the, and the media's like, he always has to talk about, the press and how he's gotten us over. But when he's doing all these rallies, like, that's what people want to hear. It's like when you go to a concert and okay, there's 3 songs I want to hear. I know they play them all the time, but these are the ones I want to hear. And him slamming the media is one of the things that people want to hear from him. So he's given the people what they want. You know what I mean? It's like,
no,
yes,
you're totally right. And like the rest of us who aren't fans of his, but are like still willing to go to the concert with a friend, we're like, I want to hear something new because I don't like the rest of the crap.
Exactly. It's like, okay, the same old stuff. And he's like, yeah, the press, that's right. The press sucks. We beat them. It's like, come on, can I get something new? No, man, these are the oldies and the goodies. This is, the best of Trump, baby.
That's why I tend to like I like his official speeches. I think those have, by and large, been really good. Like his speech in Saudi Arabia, and then speech in Israel, and then that was his most recent one about Afghanistan. I think those have always been pretty darn decent.
Yeah, I haven't.
He's not Obama-esque in his level of like oratory on reading, but he is still very passable. Like he is a guy who can speak in public and he can do a presented speech. And when he's on script, he's pretty unobjectionable. When he's off script and feeding off an audience, his audience might be part of why he like goes so far off the deep end sometimes. But at the same time, his deep end isn't like anything super crazy. It's just super crazy because of all the inferring that goes into it. Like if I assume that Trump is a Nazi, Russia collusionary agent, then yeah, everything he says is going to be scary as crap. But if I just assume that he's a dude with a lot of money who's a little detached from, everyday life of normal people, then the stuff he says really isn't all that worrying.
By the way, not to rewind, but I just wanted to, I just saw that for Harvey, J.J. Watts raised over $18 million to help down there.
Wow.
Yeah. It's just worth a mention. It's like, because I had actually seen a few people, that people tweeting out about how much he's looking to raise, and it's just an impressive thing that I just saw, and it was worth a mention.
I think this, as usual, and it's not even like surprising, and it's kind of sad that it isn't even worth the mention anymore, that like, there's a natural disaster, the United States is going to, like, it doesn't matter where it is in the world either, the United States is going to raise a 9-digit figure to mitigate that disaster,
some ridiculous amount of money.
And like you will put a dollar figure on it, and then it'll be surpassed really easily, and then they'll double it, and then they'll be like, we're still going to surpass that, and then we'll do a little more, and they'll be like, all right, we've done our part. And sometimes it'll get mishandled completely by foundations from certain political appointees like Haiti, or sometimes it'll be really successfully done, like Katrina.
I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, right? Linda Sarsour and Sean King are both highly up on the up and up fundraisers that have never had questionable fundraising, that the money has never gone to unknown sources.
That's true. And to this day, there aren't still Haitian protesters outside the Clinton Foundation headquarters.
No.
Two things. We're going to get to the Clinton thing in a bit. But also, one of the things I just want to say before we move on from the hurricane, I've seen people posting photos of Obama, like, helping out at, like, food pantries or something like that, out of context, making it sound like he was being this great help in Houston. And just because... But
because he's their Lord and Savior.
Yeah, but like you can tell, like his hair is darker, like it's not gray as it is now. Like I don't know. I guess people just want to do whatever they want to do. But going back to the Clinton thing, yeah, I'm not super in the loop, but from what I've heard, files into the Clinton investigation were requested, and the FBI declined them citing lack of public interest, which is ridiculous. And now a judge says, no, you have to give these files, from what I hear.
So when they say a lack of public interest, they are not saying that the public is not interested in these files. They are saying that the public interest is not such that it would overwhelms the privacy concerns in releasing it. So like, there's a little bit of a language barrier there in the legalese. So it's like it was fair for the FBI to make that assumption, but I totally agree with the judge that like, no, fuck that. Somebody's gotta look into this that's independent, because.
Yeah, and then also along those same lines, I have the article here. Apparently, Comey has written a letter exonerating Hillary Clinton, like shortly after the investigation even started.
Right.
So he had prepared to not,
He hadn't interviewed, I believe it was 17 of the witnesses, or, people that were set to, give statements. And had prepared his. I don't know. Was Loretta Lynch one of the first people he interviewed? Because if she was, that would make sense why there was a letter of exoneration written immediately.
Yeah, I can't say.
The timeline is sketchy at best. Like, here's the thing: whatever Comey did, he is out of his job, and I don't think he did anything particularly illegal, like malicious, but he might have been exceptionally lazy in his job, which is kind of a crime in and of itself when you're, a law enforcement officer. But I'd be willing to be like, all right, just get past that and move on to it. Was there any actual crimes? Like, if we could put the Clinton era to actual closure and to bed and say, this is what happened, this is what they did, this, here's the evidence, and this is the end of it. This is the punishment for that. And I don't care if it's millions of dollars in restitution or if it's jail time. I don't know if jail time really does any good to that, but like, at least being able to have the history books say this is what was part of this organization, or exonerate them, because that's, I guess, equally as likely at this point. I don't even know. If I'm trying to be fair, like, there are people on both sides just making up shit and slinging fucking accusations around. So, but I'd like to know. This is important shit.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's enough evidence already that the Clintons have been uncommonly corrupt, but
it's one of those things. There's no smoking gun, but God, there's a lot of smoke.
Well, I think I think we're for myself, and I think where a lot of people, it really is a six in our craw, is just the rabid fixation on Trump with Russia, which has not even smoke from what I've seen.
Well, what they've done is,
but the flip side, the Hillary thing has, like you said, a ton of smoke. And if someone actually could look at some of these, things that the FBI refused to turn over, I think they would probably find some fires. But that seems to be no, that's nothing to worry about. Well,
right, it's that unfair benefit of the doubt. And it's like,
yeah,
I can accept either of these or both of these are things they're just not worthy of investigating. But holy crap, like, if one of these deserves a special prosecutor.
I think it just shows us how how much power needs to be taken away from them, essentially.
I'm kind of the mindset that, there are some jobs, if you don't do it well, you just get fired. But especially if you work in government at the highest levels, I think that neglecting to do your job properly should be some kind of crime. Not necessarily jail time, but like in some cases, yeah. But like, you need to do your job the way the people are forced to pay you to do this job.
Well, one of the things I think for me with Hillary, it was when, one of the things that, and I'm going off of memory, was Comey essentially alluding to the fact of, well, she didn't exactly, know that these, that certain things that she did were breaking the law. I'm sorry, she's the secretary of the goddamn state. That is not a valid reason to exonerate, ignorance is not a defense, and that was, as I recall from his testimony, one of the reasons that she didn't know that this.
I think ignorance stops being a defense once you turn like 10 years old.
Ignorance stops being a defense. Defense when you are, running for president of the United States. Would ignorance of a, some sort of a, it's never been, given, Trump any sort of.
Or if it is a defense, it's like it shows you how horrible of a president she would have been. It's like if she really is ignorant of all these things, it's like, well, how can someone like that lead?
Yeah,
you have no idea what's going on. You have no idea what's classified and what's not.
She would be like, "Oh, I didn't know it was wrong for North Korea to do missile testings. I'll just let them do it." Yeah, and that's another thing that's going on. Did they just test another bomb like today or something?
Yeah, they tested
last night.
They tested a hydrogen bomb. I've seen estimates of between 100 and 120 kilotons, which is 5 to 6 times bigger than Hiroshima. No, it succeeded. I should say they claimed it was a hydrogen bomb. We haven't been able to verify that, but we do know
it was detected by earthquake. So yeah, it's either.
We do know it's a very large bomb, regardless.
Either it was a very large bomb, or North Korea had a very large earthquake of a very, very finite point, and we're really, really quick to be like, "Yeah, we have another nuke."
When are we going to drop the hammer
bomb too? So
I don't know. It's one of those things where like invading North Korea isn't like a solid option to keep them from doing something stupid. Like all it does is force them to go do something stupid. So
I think our best, maybe not, I don't think there's a best option in this case, but I think what I would guess is the most likely is that we start moving stuff in to prepare, and then I would guess that China kind of swoops in and is just like, no, we're taking this over. Like,
I don't think we can't allow China. We can't allow China to do something like that, though.
I've been asking this for a while.
Could we though? It's like, would we rather have China take over North Korea and leave it at that, or would we rather leave North Korea as is and then, do things down the current path?
We could accept South Korea taking over and reunifying that way, and China getting like a chunk of the country, and that would have to be the solution. That's the only end game where everybody can be happy, and everyone would be happy with that if they could do it in a way that secured them the economic activity they currently have with North Korea. Unfortunately, South Korea is too much of an unknown for China and Russia, because South Korea is obviously very much tied into Japan and the United States and the European Union as far as economics go. So once you have major corporations from South Korea coming in and saying, "Oh no, we're your neighbors and your family members, and we will invest in you, and we have lots of money too," that's what Russia and China are worried about. So they want the status quo to maintain. We would like South Korea to own the entire country. We cannot accept China having control of North Korea, though. There's too much natural resources there. Like,
that's what I was going to ask. Like, what does anyone gain from being allies with North Korea? Like, what do they provide?
Well, I know they have
coal and rare earth minerals.
Yeah, a lot of coal. I didn't know about any of the others.
Yeah, it's coal and rare earth minerals, and basically slave labor.
Okay, but you can go in and get. You can own the country and still get the resources. Like, why would you be allies with the North Korean government?
At this point, what we call an ally is literally somebody who will, take their money or give them money for those resources. That is, because now to do that, you're basically in violation of UN sanctions already, which China is, apparently. Which I didn't even realize that this was quite so, like, cut and dry, but the way everyone's talking about it, like, China is just straight up not abiding by the UN sanctions that they voted for. They're continuing to allow their banks to do business with North Korea, which is helping to fund all of this. So, I mean, if that is true, then we've got bigger issues, but not particularly easy to solve ones either.
Yeah, it's...
Well, I think it's in our lifetime. In our lifetime, North Korea is going to not exist anymore.
That would be excellent, I think.
So here's the, I mean, I wonder if Kim Jong-un is sitting there like, God damn it, why do they keep making progress on these nukes? Because he had the perfect setup, his father especially, where he had this ongoing program that really could never come to fruition in a realistic way, and created the scenario where he was the protector and the godlike figure, and nobody had any real problem with him externally. And he could just be allowed to be this tin pot dictator in a country with lots of actual resources and a very lavish lifestyle. And now he's getting to the point where his own propaganda is going to push him into a corner. Once they have the ability to actually intercede and threaten Japan and South Korea and Beijing simultaneously with a nuclear first strike, and the rest of the world says, "Whoa, well now we have no military solution to them invading Seoul." That short of all-out nuclear war. What does he have to? He has to invade Seoul, like, or his generals overthrow him and go do it for him because he's brainwashed a lot of them into this position.
Yeah, I watched a little bit of the Joe Rogan podcast here and there, but there was one. I think it was the one from a couple months ago with Michael Malice. There's talk about how even Kim Jong-un got sucked into this whole system because of his predecessors. Like they just kind of like even he has no way out of this whole system. Like it's crazy. Like everyone's stuck in this system where they're all terrified to death, and like no one knows how to break that cycle. It's just like
that's the only peaceful way that you end up with a non-nuclear state actor in North Korea is with Kim Jong-un's head on a pike. Like that is a way that can happen, but it would take some amazing power in North Korea to be able to do that. I don't even know if that's a legitimate possibility. But there's no way he can go out and say, "Oh, well, this nuclear program we've been working on for decades and that you've all been starving to produce, yeah, we're going to give that up now to get basically all the things they've offered us in the past and no real progress made. My father was an idiot."
Yeah, you know, like apparently he had like married someone and like had to keep them secret and hide them away, like because they were to get killed because like he was supposed to marry someone that his father told him to marry. Like even like I never knew that until I saw that podcast. Like I can't believe that like even he's like trapped. It's just like
that's the thing. I can't tell if he's trapped or if he's just bought into his own retard hype.
Well, at some point you gotta like some people always have to feel like they're in charge. So at some point to like reconcile that, he probably does have to buy into it to be like, okay, to like take control of it, you know, rather than keep living at like in that state of like.
I would tend to think just how he's been acting. I would tend to think he would probably. I think he's at a point that he's bought into it, really.
Right. That's the dangerous part. Is if he is not cognizant of the fact that there's no military solution to his problems. The peaceful ones aren't really there either for him, but that makes him a really dangerous actor. Because if he's cognizant of all of the pieces on the chessboard, then he is a suicidal person. He knows his death is going to be imminent. He has 5 years to live in any outcome in this, right? Because either they get the nuclear option in a sustainable way that they can then threaten China, Japan, and South Korea with, and possibly the United States directly. At which point his generals are going to say, "Well, we're going to go take Seoul now, right?" And he has nothing to say, "We can't do that," right? Or he does a first strike immediately and gets fucking incinerated in a nuclear fire when the United States and those countries rightfully retaliate. So I like nobody said here's how North Korea comes out of this, with a stable government and the current leaders in charge, and that scares the shit out of me.
Or what if North Korea gets hit by a hurricane? That's a totally different situation.
It'd be a typhoon, I think.
It'll be a typhoon on that. Yeah, no.
Whereas it just skips that thin point in Mexico, just magically goes up there.
I think we can just like
that would require a lot of magic.
Apparently, humans can change the environment and climate.
Well, I was going to say, Donald Trump and the Republicans are to blame for the hurricane anyway, so they apparently need to just turn on their weather control machine and just steer the hurricane.
Well, no, North Korea just has to vote Trump in. It's as simple as that.
This
I think
could be a
North
solution to all of our problems. I'm liking
North
this.
Korea is just kind of a problem that we let fester for way too long now, and now it's like infected, and it's like,
Let's say North Korea is the boogeyman that Iraq was, right? Like had Saddam Hussein been a little more intelligent, he would have been at the same stage, and had we not had 9/11. His sons might have actually ended up being the same problem at this point for us, and they probably would have been in a very close alliance, and the technologies would probably be passing between them. But this is what we were worried about in Iraq. It's just actually happening in North Korea because we bought their bullshit. And North Korea is what happens if Saddam Hussein had allowed all the weapons inspectors to do their job properly and hadn't, put up roadblocks and faked car accidents and all that stuff. If he hadn't created a difficulty for the UN, he'd still be in power. We never would have had the Iraq War, and we would now probably have an Iraqi nuclear weapons program in the similar state as Iran and North Korea, and their missile tech would probably be a lot better. So, for all the the Iraq War was a horrible thing we never should have done. It's like, looking back now, I'm still kind of like, maybe that was the right call. It wasn't the best executed war in history, and we're probably going to have a badly executed one for this one too. But at a certain point, when people are like, I want to kill you, and they have the ability to kill you, and they're working on ways to do it better, go kill them first is not an irresponsible reaction to that. I'm all for the peaceful side of like, let's try to find all peaceful solutions, though. Like that we should exhaust every option before we're like fucking big red button you. But
I agree, and I think from what I've kind of gathered, I think the Trump administration and really even before him, Obama administration, were doing that with North Korea. They're trying to find in the most peaceful way.
Yeah, no, this is all the way back to Clinton. Like, nobody can say that North Korea hasn't had every option to try to come clean on this.
I think it just shows you that I don't think peaceful solutions generally work in cases like this.
Well, not with this particular group. I mean, it's clear. I mean, when he when Trump says fire and something they've never done, and big baby Kim Jong is like, okay, let's do another test. It's like, okay, this isn't Obama. This isn't going to be, I don't think, an empty threat. If you push it, it's gonna happen.
Another thing I heard from the Joe Rogan podcast, I don't know if it's true or not. It's just this guy's theory, I think, is that like all the failed tests are like strategically planned so that like we underestimate the enemy, or like it's a way for them to back down from a confrontation without having to physically say like we're backing down or whatever.
Yeah, no, I
so
totally
that'd be crazy.
agree.
That's crazy. I can't believe that. That's
I don't
ridiculous.
want that it's like, why? It's like what sense does any of that make? It's like,
they got a ton of concessions out of us with all of his tests, and that's the thing. It was always it would be a failed test after some peace accord would come, and that was the justification for why we were we were willing to let them continue with what they'd been doing, basically. And it only makes sense if you're like, we need to avoid a war at all costs, and we can afford to do that. And at the time we could, and now it's coming to the point where maybe we can't. I mean, I hope there is some like magical solution that I just am not seeing, and there are people smarter than me. But
how dare you? That's fake. I will fake news that statement right now, sir.
Like, it's just hard to see when you're like, literally, I've yet to see a single expert.
But but that's but that's one of the things. It's like, yeah, there, but you would think, yes, there are people that are smarter than us in this, in this realm. But if they are, why has this been going on for so fucking long?
Because politically it was difficult for them. Like,
well, I understand that, but it's like you're smart, then it's not like, hey, we've given you a month, you got to come up with a solution. This has been going on for
half a century.
So when the solution is really difficult, no one wants to listen to the negative Nancy in the room, the no man who's like, no, that plan's dumb. You should do this thing that's much more difficult. When that guy who's like, no, I have the easy solution pipes up, like that, you go with that guy, right?
The easy solution seems to have been, let's just go stick our heads in the sand. Yeah. Okay, that seems great. Let's do that.
Well, it was the hope that this is where it all ties back into political Islam too, in that the Un family and the Kim Jong family and radical Islam have the same thing, the same fundamental problem in their press package, if you will. They tell everyone they want to destroy the great Satan. So once they have the ability to affect that plan in any way, shape, or form, they have to deliver it, or they cede all power and probably lose their lives. They can't turn around and be like, oh, maybe these guys aren't that bad. So they're going to act in what seems like irrational ways to us, but are totally rational in what they have to do. When you're facing, I'm going to die either way, all of a sudden, nuking Seoul nuking Japan doesn't seem like such a bad idea.
Might as well go out, spraying my testosterone all over the.
Or, they panic. Like, here's the thing. If Tokyo goes up in a nuclear ball of fire, I guarantee you there's going to be a lot of people who run to give them whatever they want. Appeasement is a natural reaction to that level of destruction. The outpouring of sympathy and the fear of it happening to you is going to be so immense that people will take one of those two reactions. It's going to be full retaliation, or it is going to be complete appeasement and do whatever they want that we can afford to give up. And selling off Seoul is a real easy thing for a lot of Americans to support, I would think.
I feel confident
in World War II.
I feel confident in saying with this
the emperor is just like, all right, we're done.
I mean, yeah. But that's the thing. He was already he was in a losing position where he knew the war was over for him regardless. So the dropping of the bombs was more about affecting what everyone knew was going to be the final outcome in a faster way. Whereas you look back at Pearl Harbor was supposed to be that same action of scaring us into capitulating. It was supposed to weaken us to a point where we'd be willing to give oil back again and stay out of the greater conflict. And instead, we went hard the other way and said, fuck all of them, we're killing everybody. And that's a very Americanized thing, but that was also coming off a really long era of isolationism. And people have been lobbying against it very hard in a very powerful way and saying, no, there's horrible things happening in the rest of the world. And we don't have that now. We have the exact opposite. We've had a big push of people saying, no, we're too involved. We're the problem. America is not the anti-American intellectual crowd or excellence crowd has been pushing that and seeding it into our minds. And now, I really could see it going either way if that, mushroom cloud goes up over Tokyo of them coming out saying, no, this is American policy. We've caused this and it's our fault and we need to take a step back and really listen to what their demands are because we push them into this corner.
Not with this president. Not with this president.
No, you're right. You're right. It would not be a Trump.
If this was Obama, I could see that, kind of like the abused wife. They slapped us. Oh, well, let's talk about it. No,
it may not be Trump though. That's the thing. This could definitely be a 3 to 4 year thing where I could see that, and I could see them waiting for another administration. And if Trump doesn't win re-election, and honestly, I think he has a harder time winning re-election if there is this menacing problem of North Korea existing.
It's Chang Uyghur.
I just look down and see that buffalo staring back at me. I'm like, good God.
Right.
Exactly. No one expects the buffalo, but the buffalo can always show up.
Okay. Here's the thing.
Do we need to Google it?
Go look it up.
Go look it up. Okay, we'll go look it up.
Google. Well, I guess we're reaching the end of our hour. So anyone that's watching, thanks for watching live and for participating in the chat. If you haven't already, subscribe to us and also Matt Christiansen, who is having his podcast next, Beauty and the Beta, at 9
They're
o'clock.
having a podcast, a live podcast.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, by the way,
Tell Anna to keep it down back there, Cenk, would you please?
Sorry.
She's Armenian. She should know better.
I'll be more professional. Okay.
But yeah, congratulations from us again to Roaming Millennial, who just recently reached 200,000 subscribers, which is awesome. When we started this podcast, like, what was it, like 20 weeks ago? She was at like 131, and she's risen like another 70,000 since then. So
that's it. That's an increase of over 50%.
I got to think at least 10,000 of that is from our shout outs here on our podcast. I mean, I really think we had something to do with that.
Of course.
By the way, Matt and Blonde, they have Sticks and Hammer as a special guest tonight.
Ooh, so check that out. Also, I remember that Matt was. I think he deserves a lot more subscribers than he has, and he was hovering around 50,000, 55,000 for a while, and then I've been at camp a lot. And I haven't been able to stay in the loop for the past couple of months, but I come back, and he jumped all the way up to 80,000. So that's awesome, also.
Yeah, his response video to Cenk saying "Google it" went viral. Like Ben Shapiro retweeted it and some other people, so that really shot him up there. So Cenk in a way is responsible for some additional success of Matt's.
That is awesome.
Is that really Cenk being responsible for it, or is that Matt's?
Listen, in the Cenk brain, it would be his. It would be because of him. So yes,
that's fair.
For all good things.
I'm right here, guys. Like, you can stop talking, Mom. Okay.
But I'll stop talking now.
So discussion.
Finish the close out.
No, we're still having a reasonable discussion, but okay. All right. Well, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you again next week.
Peace.
Later.
Have a good night.
Bye.